All right, bienvenidos. Welcome to the Brown Perspective. I'm here with my co-host Eduardo. ¿Cómo estamos?
Bien, bien, estamos bien. Buenos días a
Buenos
todos.
días, Capitán Cavernícola.
Oh, sí, el Capitán Cavernícola. Uno de my favorite cartoons ever.
I think they used to play those in Colombia as well, right? Because we've talked about this before.
Yes, yeah, they did. And I remember that was a thing to do on Saturday mornings. Just watch cartoons, wake up early, watch cartoons.
And now we're doing the podcast Saturday morning talking about cartoons.
There you go. How far we've come.
Yeah. I used to watch those in Mexico when I was growing up too. I don't know if definitely Saturday mornings, maybe Sunday mornings, and then throughout the week. I don't remember the times, but those all of those classic Hanna Barbera cartoons. When I was a
Hmm.
kid in Mexico, they used to play all of those. So there's Capitan Cavernícola. I think there was one called Don Gato y su Pandilla, but I don't know what it's in
Don Gato y su
English.
pandilla.
Yeah, yeah, something
And
about
it's
alley cats.
And it's funny because I don't think I knew that name. Like I don't think I knew who the creators were or who the production company was behind it. But I'm sure I could tell depending on the how the cartoon looked, right? I think you can kind of tell
Oh yeah,
the aesthetic or
the
the
way they used to draw the characters. There's so
yeah.
many cartoons that are made by them. The one with the what's the one with the bear and the little sidekick?
Yogi Bear.
Yeah, Yogi Bear. That one
Hey,
is
boo.
yeah, exactly. I used to play that one. There's so many. And when I was a kid, I remember I used to think that it was a woman that created these cartoons because of the name Bar. I think it's Barbara, but I used to just in my mind I used to read it as Barbara. So I
Hmm.
thought, oh, really cool. This woman makes these cartoons that are really entertaining for kids. I found some comfort in that. I felt like this woman really knows what I like.
That's funny.
She knows how to
But
make a
it,
cartoon
but
perfect for
yeah,
me.
it was funny because I think it's sometimes cartoons are have that amazing quality that they're definitely very entertaining for kids, but they also have a lot of subtext
Hmm.
or things that is also geared towards the adults or that sort of reflect some broader themes that sometimes people miss
Yeah,
just by
I'm pretty sure
watching.
all of those went over my head as a kid. I would have to watch the cartoons again now. I didn't find out until I was older, a lot older, and I spoke English that Hanna Barbera is. I think it's the last name of the two guys that create the cartoons. I was a bit disappointed to find out that it was man. Again, because of that comforting thought that maybe it was like because when you're a kid, you're very close to your mom and that
Hmm.
nurturing. And so I think I saw it as an extension of that. Like, oh, my mom nurtures me, and here's this other woman that just seems to know the cartoons that I really love. Maybe all women are like that. Look, at some deep psychological level, there's probably a connection there
Wow.
because I can't explain why I was disappointed when I found out that it was two men.
That's funny. Now you got me curious, wondering, who were some of the pioneering women who were involved in the cartoon industry.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I would need a deep therapy session with a therapist to try to uncover if there's anything there.
Well, and it's funny because in a time of a pandemic, I think kids are watching cartoons, and obviously cartoons are very different. There's a more interactive, obviously games and things like that. But in some ways, cartoons do. It's almost like they're teachers in some ways, right? And I noticed that in the some of the cartoons that my niece and my nieces watch. So like Peppa Pig and all these cartoons are trying to inculcate this philosophy, this approach to life. So in some ways, cartoons are kind of like our first teachers, our first classmates, right? So I think that's how you start getting ready to go to school, and then obviously start dealing with those types of interactions.
Yeah, hopefully there's not many 5 to 7 year olds growing up on South Park.
No, you have to graduate to that.
They're
I
gonna
do have
grow
to
up.
say that I used to love sort of the Bugs Bunny, the Looney
Oh
Tunes,
yeah,
and I used to love the music, right? When they used to like do cartoons to the music, and it was just so entertaining.
yeah. Those cartoons, the Bugs Bunny and the Woody Woodpecker, Daffy
Hmm.
Duck.
El
Like,
pájaro loco.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
Tom and Jerry. This is how as a kid how much attention you pay to these cartoons, because I remember that Tom and Jerry, when I would watch them, it had a particular feel to the way they used to draw the characters. And then
Hmm.
every now and then you would watch the older ones or maybe the newer ones, and you would notice that there was a change in how they're drawing
Yeah.
them. And I used to think like, oh, I don't like how they look. Like Tom looks dirty the way that they're drawing him. So you notice those little things as a kid, because that's part of your world as you said, as you're developing. The cartoons get incorporated into what you're becoming, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow,
And then just the last thing is
yeah,
because like for those of our listeners who are more of Simpsons, I think you can kind of see that with the Simpsons. You can kind of see the early episodes of the Simpsons, and then the ones that you grew up with, and then the newer ones. So I think you can kind of see the different stages of I guess technology and
yeah,
drawing and the aesthetic of the time.
yeah. That's true. I'm also not a fan of how The Simpsons looked originally. When I go back and see some of those,
Mm.
yeah. So let's get back into this. I was going over the headlines this morning just to see what just to do
Uh-oh.
a heat check of what's in the news. And check this out, the very first headline, that the very thing
Caliente.
the very thing that I told you was going to happen last week, that these allegations against Joe Biden were intensifying. And now we have it's right, so it's the one that's trending. But before we talk about this, I just want to show you something, because I think this is interesting. So
Okay.
all those people that say that Google is manipulating search results. I don't know if you've heard it, but that they essentially it's a very powerful way to get people to steer the conversation in a certain direction, based
Mm-hmm.
specifically based on what somebody searches for. Google gives you results, and most of the time, people choose the first three, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely do people go to the second page, because what Google tells you is what's most relevant. And doing that, they can steer the conversation in certain ways. So I just found it interesting that when I went to Google, let me go to the main one right here, right? So I type in Joe Biden, and even though the allegations are trending, this autocomplete for Joe Biden is not showing me that. And I press space too. And
Mm-hmm.
the whole point of this autocomplete is that it's predictive texting. It takes into account a whole bunch of different parameters so that it can give you what it thinks is the most relevant to you. So, for example, it'll take into account the date, what's in the news about Joe Biden. It'll even take your past search history if it has access to it. It'll take into consideration the fact that you're a guy. It'll try to get as much information that Google knows about you so that it can personalize this result for you. And given the fact that Joe Biden's allegation is trending and it's the very first thing, that's what this algorithm would naturally produce based on the way the algorithm is written. Unless somebody throws in there an exception that says, even though you get this as a top hit for this individual, remove
Mm-hmm.
it and just give them the generic ones.
But I guess you can argue that I guess is what one, two, three, four Joe Biden morning Joes. So I guess people who know that it was that his response to the allegations, or like I think that's what's trending too, the interview and what he said or did not say during the interview, or how he responded
Mm-hmm.
during that interview. So
Okay.
obviously that would take
Okay.
a
I mean,
higher level of unknowing or or knowing what kind of the debate is or the dialogue is.
sure. I'll give you that. But let me go ahead and type in a little bit more letters to see what Google tells me. So I'm gonna type TA. Oh, no autocompletes for Tara Reid. That's interesting.
Huh.
Let me go ahead and type in sex. Oh, nothing. Let
Ah,
me type in rape. Wow, absolutely nothing. This is a
mm,
blackout. This is a way that you make sure that somebody searching for Joe Biden that doesn't hasn't heard about this before, or that maybe has heard it, but maybe they're looking to Joe Biden to see what's going on, that they don't get steered in that direction. So it's just interesting. But then again, right? So I again, I'm not arguing for one thing or another. I'm just showing you what I think is curious here. That on the one hand, Google News does show it, but these search results don't. So now we got to think about, well, what's Google News doing? Um, do they have a different algorithm to show you what's trending? Yeah, I'm sure, because this is slightly different than you searching. This is just the general headlines. And at some point, these do become personalized to the individual based on what Google knows about you. But
Mm-hmm.
they're not filtering out these stories. And I think it's just that it's a lot harder to get away with filtering out headlines, because this is more global than just somebody doing a search, because Google can always say, well, there's a lot that goes into the algorithm and blah blah blah. But in this case, no, this is just showing you what's in the news, so they have to show it. It would be a lot harder to pretend like they don't filter their search results if they were filtering this out.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, that was just my little segue into conspiracy theory Romero.
No, yeah, but it's a valid point, and I think it's just obviously Google is the now the predominant source of information, but I guess you can make the argument that newspapers, editorial boards, and others have been doing that type of yeah, editorial decisions as to what goes on, what doesn't go on, what goes in the front cover, what doesn't. But yeah, so I think that it's part of our reality now that so much of our information is channeled through this through these algorithms, and that you probably are only seeing what you tend to see, but then obviously there's a lot of information that you are not privy to and perhaps you're missing out on.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get a little bit into this just to provide some context before we dive into discussing it. I just want to give some context into Tara Reid and the whole allegation, because we can't assume that everyone already knows about this. She was a junior staffer in Senate Biden's office in 1993, and she claims that he sexually assaulted her. And I think that, let's see, where's the part? I just want to get to the part where she specifically says what she did.
I think it's
Mm,
below the retaliation.
yeah, here it is. Accused Biden last year of touching her shoulders and neck and making her feel uncomfortable. So that's what she claimed. That's what she accused him last year. Sorry. And then, but at the time, she didn't disclose the sexual assault, which that seems understandable. I think sometimes, because if you're a victim, it's hard. And by the way, I'm not saying I believe her. I'm just saying that if you're a victim of something like this, I think sometimes it's a natural progression where you start getting more comfortable with bringing this up. So maybe she made these. Maybe she came out and say that, hey, he used to touch me inappropriately in the neck and shoulders. She gauged what the reaction was, and then she got enough support from her community to go ahead and come forward with the rest of it. That's just one
Mm-hmm.
way of looking at it. And then, so she told CNN that in 1993, when she was working as an aide in Biden's Senate office, she was asked to deliver a duffel bag to the then Delaware senator in a corridor somewhere in the Capitol Hill complex. Reid said Biden had me up against the wall. He used his knee to open my legs, and he put his fingers inside of me. Okay, so I do have an issue with the way they're portraying it here, because
Mm-hmm.
nothing ever happens like that when it comes to these sexual allegations, unless you're dealing with a predator that
Mm-hmm.
rapes women, right? That's what he dedicates himself to, and even rapes women that are complete strangers. That's not the case here. There's way more shade here that they're not giving you. And to me, just looking at this situation, what I'm thinking is they knew each other. I'm sure they were friendly with each other. Knowing Biden and knowing all the other allegations of all the other women, he probably was touching her and doing all these things. I don't know, there's a chance that she's young. She doesn't know how to react to it. Maybe she feels uncomfortable. Maybe she smiles nervously when he does this. Either way, it could be misinterpreted as her flirting with him.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden could interpret it that way. So they probably have this type of relationship where she just goes along because, again, you have a power figure, and He acts inappropriately, but she just laughs because at the end of the day, a little bit of touching here and there in 1993, that's probably normal, a lot more normal than it is now. To write, or at least you're expected that that's how men are going to be. But then this guy Joe Biden um, misinterprets all that. He thinks, "Hey, this girl actually kind of likes me. Maybe I can take it a step further." So they run in. They see each other in the hallway. They probably strike up a conversation. Maybe that's when he decides to go from just touching her to take it to the next level and cross that line. And then that's when this happens. It's still totally inappropriate because she did not give him permission, and definitely it's still sexual assault. But when they put it like this, it makes it seem like they just ran into each other in a hallway and then he started
Yeah.
doing this. Come on, give us a little bit more insight into this. What do you think?
No, yeah, because I think there's a lot of space between what you just described and what's being reported, and I think it is. They do say is a corridor, a hallway, so there's the assumption that there will be other people. Obviously, this maybe it's late at night.
Yeah.
The fact that she's giving him a duffel bag, maybe it's the end of the night. He's going home. He's going to the gym, whatever the case may be. But there are a lot of people who are in the halls of the Senate at that time too. There's a lot of staff, uh, a lot of cops, a lot of also custodial staff. So yeah, so I think that there just needs to be a lot more information about this, about what the were there any incidents before, and was this just a culmination of maybe some previous episodes between the two of them?
Yeah. Look, I'm all for fairness and I'm all for consistency. So when the allegations came up against Brent Kavanaugh, before he was before they decided to vote on him if he was gonna go into the Supreme Court, I was all okay. Yeah, conduct a full investigation, uncover as
Hmm.
much as you can. Don't assume that the woman is telling the truth. Don't assume she's lying. Just present the evidence and then see if you can come up with something that's provable. Now, that's the problem. The burden of proof is really hard. In this case, same thing. You have a woman that's bringing these allegations, and she's not the only one, by the way. So that's a data point in itself. It's not proof, but it's just a data point that people can use to get a gauge as to whether or not this guy did it. Like, I don't think they're gonna find anything like a smoking gun that proves that he did this. But if you just ask me, based on Biden's history, all the other allegations, politician, man in power, this woman, from what I was reading in other websites and listening on the radio, she did report this incident to, I believe, it was her brother, her mom, and even the neighbor. Which the brother and the neighbor have now come forward and said that yeah, they remember this from back. Obviously, there's no written proof of it, and she did say that she filed a complaint, a
Hmm.
formal complaint, but then that complaint didn't mention this specific incident. It was just mentioned a harassment complaint, and but she doesn't have a copy of it. And the office that she filed it with, which would be the equivalent of human resources, whatever that is for a junior staffer, then they say they don't have it. Okay, well, fine. You can make documents disappear too if you're the vice president or if you're somebody having power. So I'm not. That's just more data points, right? And so I don't think they're gonna find enough. Oh, sorry. One more thing. The moms supposedly did call. Oh, here it is. Larry King live video where this came up, and this is at the time of it. Let's see, what does it say? Let me look for the part that says Larry King. Biden accuser says mother called Larry King live for advice after alleged sexual assault. So this is when it happened. So you have all of this corroborating, at least if it's not accepted as evidence, you have people corroborating her story. And if you ask me, they're not going to find anything to convict Biden. But I'm like 95% sure that he did this. Just
Hmm.
just based on this. Come on, man. Look, I was sure that Brett Kavanaugh, just based on the evidence and everything, it was a good chance that he did that as well. Same thing with Biden. Look, he's no different than any of these other politicians just because he's a Democrat. He's a guy in power. These things a lot of the times they happen a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if if she's the only one. She's the only one that's come forward. They never talk about how, and this isn't giving Joe Biden an excuse by any chance, but they never talk about how stupid men are, that they misinterpret a woman's friendliness and a woman's smile as the woman being interested in them or
Hmm.
being into them. So this guy could have misinterpreted her personality and that of many other women, and he's just a man, and he does that, and he happens to be in power. He thinks he can get away with it, and he does it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely uh, plausible, and I do think that because of the the power dynamics, and I think that guys do tend to be think, oh, like she's being nice to me because she likes me, or all those things. So I think that does have a dynamic. It's not an excuse, because I think you can still, you don't have to act on it, or be aggressive on all those things. So is it feasible? Yes. I think that at the same time, what's was shitty about the situation is that you also have a president who has been accused of even similar things, right? And there's actually proof that he made payments to um, you know to Stormy Daniels and all these things. He's caught on tape speaking, the famous uh,
Grab him by the
yeah. So it's just sucks, right? It's just like the fact that so it sucks in one, because it kind of just diverts from the critical issues that are before our elected leaders now, and the situations that we're going to have to deal with, the important decisions that we have to deal with moving forward. So it's shitty in that way. And at the same time, it's also, perhaps it needs to happen, because that way we can address these issues. And I think it's part of the realization that this is after the Me Too movement. This is more after there's more awareness about was appropriate and inappropriate behavior. And I think it's just perhaps part of the ongoing growth that we need to do as a society. Because around that time, and I'm trying to remember the years exactly, but I guess it's not, is it a little bit before the Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky stuff. It's unfortunate that we're still talking about it, but at the same time, because we didn't talk about them, or we didn't have the opportunity to address that issue then. Now we have the opportunity to do so, and hopefully grow from it.
yeah. I don't think that the comparison against Trump is going to help Biden very much, because Biden pretends to hold himself to a higher standard, and Trump doesn't. Trump, that's why all these things rub off of him, like water off a duck's back. Because the guy, at least, he's honest in that he's a total douchebag, and he'll deny all these things. But he
Hmm.
does so many other things where he just owns up to being such a crappy person in general. And Joe Biden pretends like he's not. And this is usually why these politicians' career ends when an allegation like this comes up, because everybody calls them out on their BS. And, you know, your response to this is a little tempered, it's a little tame. And I can understand why, because Joe Biden is your candidate. I don't have a problem criticizing him, because I thought he was a crappy candidate to begin with. So I'm not surprised that this stuff is coming out. I don't know how it's going to affect them, because again, the you have people like Stacey Abrams that is going on, was it CNN or MSNBC, and she's saying that she stands with Joe Biden. This is the same woman that, if it was Brett Kavanaugh, she would have been on his ass, trying to call for a formal investigation, trying to make sure that we used all of the resources and all of the power to look into it. saying that she was with the Me Too movement, but now porque le interesa, because it's in her interest, she comes back and she says, I'm with Biden. And because again, she's on the short list of potential um, vice presidential nominees, right? So
Hmm.
again, she is someone who is a shell of an actual person with integrity. She's gonna lie when she needs to get ahead, and she's not speaking what she really believes. She's going against what she wants to represent because she's supposed to be the progressive, and now she's with Joe Biden. Like, how can you be with Joe Biden if you don't even know the full story? The best you can say right now is we have no idea. Let's investigate this. Like, I'm willing to say that he's guilty, but I wouldn't say that I believe the woman 100%. I'm just saying investigate it. What makes him any different than any other politician that does this stuff over and over? And so all of the liberals are having a really hard time right now dealing with this because now we have Joe Biden, who is the Democratic nominee, and he was already going to face an uphill battle with Trump. Now Trump is going to use this against him and wipe the floor with him.
But that's it. So I'm trying to reconcile, and you're right. So I think that there's something to be said about the integrity and and I think for me personally, I think Joe Biden wasn't my first choice, but I do he is a presumptive Democratic nominee at this point. But I think that so then how you contrast what you just said with what the conservatives did in getting behind Trump?
Yeah, they're full of
It
BS. They're full of BS. But we
Okay.
but we always criticize the conservatives. I'm fine. I mean, look, it's easy to criticize the conservatives. What I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of that criticism now is coming home. Now it's time to
Yeah.
criticize the liberals because we're doing the same. I mean, I'll include myself in there to some extent, but I'm more of a progressive, and I'm more of like a fair investigation. But a lot of the liberal establishment is doing the same thing that we always criticize the conservatives for. And
Hmm.
what I've always said is just I ask for consistency. Just be consistent. If you're going to criticize other people, then you have to be ready to criticize yourself when you're doing the same things. And now the Democrats are doing the same exact thing that they've criticized the conservatives of doing for so long.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think but even within that Democratic liberal bloc, I'm sure that there are people who probably were Bernie supporters or other candidate supporters who now say, see, that's one of the reasons that I was supporting my candidate because I knew that they were going to have this much baggage coming into this contest, and now this comes up. So I think is so to your point, yes, I think there needs to be an investigation, and I think Joe Biden has expressed that he supports that at too,
But he
as
doesn't want to
well.
release he doesn't want to release the records that he gave to the University of Delaware, or at least make them accessible. So he's not
Well, my
full
understanding
transparency.
was that it was not the sergeant at arms. There's another Senate office that would, like you said, that serves as the HR folks, and I think those would be because that allegation would gone to that office and not to the senator's office, although she could potentially have addressed it with her manager or the chief of staff, but she probably went to that HR office and they should have kept a record. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but I don't think that would have been part of his personal records
Oh no, I'm not
that would
talking
have
of
gone to
yeah.
go to the library.
Yeah, I'm not talking about any record of any formal complaint that she would have filed. I'm just talking about records that give an insight into the type of relationship that he had with her,
Oh.
right? There's gigabytes of data that he has, and probably stacks of documents that have been printed, notes from meetings, memos, emails, if they had email back then, or whatever, however they communicated in the office amongst each other back then. There's a lot of stuff. If the guy is clean, well, see, here's the other problem. I understand why he doesn't want to to open up those records for scrutiny, because it may very well be the case that he didn't do any of this, and that she's just saying all these things, and that back in 1993 she approached her brother, her mother, and the neighbor, and that she did it for I don't know what reason, right? Maybe she did it thinking that in a few decades, when this guy runs for president, I'll get my 15 minutes of fame. I'm
I
willing
doubt it.
I'm willing to go that far and say that is the reason why she would say these things to her neighbors. But even even if she's making all that up and Joe Biden has nothing to do with it here, if he opens up those records for scrutiny, they're gonna find something else. They're gonna find something else to get him with. It may not be allegations about rape. It might be another woman. It might be corruption, taking bribes or taking money from somewhere that he didn't have to. They'll find something else. So it's not. He's in a difficult place because he looks bad by not opening up those records for inspection. But he knows that if he opens them up, they'll find something else. These guys are politicians. Their career is built on lying. And getting away with, they always straddle the line between what's legal, what's legally like a legal, not a legal bribery, but the legal ways to operate within the framework, but they always cross over to like the illegal side in so many aspects. And it's so any politician that you want to shine the light on, you can find a lot of stuff that you can then call them out on. So yeah, I'm not surprised that he's not going to release those records.
Hmm.
But this is Stacey Abrams, man. She's so I guess that there you go, progressive
So
behind
she
Biden.
came, she came
She what?
to defend them
Oh yeah, yeah. She's
pretty
defending him.
aggressively.
Yeah, she said that the New York Times had looked into the case, and then they had found that there was no evidence to suggest that any of this was true. And then I think the New York Times published a report the next day that said, "Yeah, we never said that. We said we looked into it and we didn't find conclusive evidence one way or the other," which is a lot
Mm.
very different than her saying that the New York Times looked into it and that they didn't find anything. I'm parroting what I've heard from other sources, so call me out on it if that's not true, because obviously I don't have that up. But as best as I understand that, that's how it went down with Stacey Abrams. So yeah, this guy's in trouble. What do you think? Look, at this point, you're probably better off just dropping Joe and putting somebody that could actually beat Trump. And I'm not saying Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying one of these progressives, because they're not going to choose a progressive, but they might have somebody else. I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary Clinton is in the sidelines, salivating, thinking like, "Man, how can I make the best out of this? This gives me an opportunity to come in and save the party." Imagine if Hillary Clinton came in and, as her vice president, she picked Stacey Abrams or Michelle Obama or Elizabeth Warren, two women on the ticket to try to energize people. It's all about appearances anyway. You never know. Don't put it past these politicians. They'll do anything to get elected.
Yeah, I think I don't know because I think the hate and the dislike of Hillary is so strong. So I don't think she would be the right person. I think someone like Elizabeth Warren or even Amy Klobuchar, who, if let's say this were to progress and then we get to a point where even if the investigation hasn't come down with some conclusive evidence, but it just Joe Biden and his campaign figured, it's just going to be impossible to mount a successful challenge and to run an effective campaign. I mean, they could potentially pull the plug and then provide an opportunity for one of the folks who was already running to step up and do that. But yeah, so I think that's the the difficulty about this situation, right? Because it's you're sort of committed on this horse,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're gonna have to you realize that maybe there's something wrong with your horse, and you need to get in another one, but you're already in the race. So, but I think ultimately, it's you're right. I think consistency and I appreciate the your value of it, and it's true. But I do think that it's almost like an inedible flaw in human nature for the most part. I think there are very few of us who can, you know, do things that are right all the time, make the right decision all the time. And I think I think people make mistakes. People learn from their mistakes. Um, Others people don't. They just keep making the same mistakes or
Hmm.
even bigger mistakes. And
Well,
then when it comes with politics, there's so many other things going on, right? There's fundraising, popularity, policy, different interests and personalities,
right.
and it's just a really difficult situation to manage.
Well, you know what I'm gonna say though, right? If okay,
Say it.
okay, if I'm all with you, man. Whichever way you want to go, as long as it's consistency. So you need to make that same defense of Trump. If you're gonna make that defense of Biden, saying that he's only human and we all make mistakes, you have to do the same for Trump, man. You can't you can't turn up the heat when it's the guy
Yeah.
that is on the other
No.
side of the aisle.
Yeah. No. I mean, for me, like and I think in multiple conversations, I've spoken to the good things and the things that Trump has done and the qualities that he brings to the there's a reason why he got elected, right? Like he played the game of politics, right? He played the game of TV, right? And actually for me, like I don't I hate his policies, I hate what he stands for, but I don't wish the person ill. So like for me it's just like I've been pretty consistent, like like that's Trump, that's his lifestyle, that's how he grew up with that privilege. He grew up with the type of environment where he could do the kind of shit that he's doing, and he can get away with it. Same thing with Biden. So like for me, it's not that I sort of put Joe Biden on a pedestal and Trump in another place. So for me, it's just like realizations that we're all humans. We're all learning about from our mistakes. And in this type of situation, it's a shitty choice, right? So as a Democrat, you're currently thinking, okay, so if I don't support Joe Biden, so then that means Trump wins, and then there's 4 more years of policies that are not only impacting my family, are impacting the world, are impacting my pocketbook, that are impacting the environment, or I support someone who maybe may or may not have made done something like this, and may have done this something like this in a few times perhaps, but that who still has better policy, who still has a better group of people working to make a better change and to bring about a better vision of the country, that is not perfect. It's not going to be it's not going to be the perfect union, but at least it's going to be a lot better than we have now. So there's that, and then there's the realization. Okay, so if this guy is flawed and this comes out now, what is the choice? There's really no choice other than what we mentioned, another potential demo leading candidate stepping in. And then I know that this week there was an independent candidate from Michigan who stepped up as well, Congressman, trying to remember his name. Uh,
You want me to look him up?
yeah. So, and that's the other thing, right? So he's stepping into the fight as an independent, which is fine. I think he made the point of when I heard him that he's people can um can choose to vote either for Trump or for Biden, and that he's providing an independent. There he is.
This guy,
Um,
Amash.
yeah, Mush. Um,
Yeah, look. See, here's the problem. Here's not the problem. Here are the things that need to be weighed, though. What you just said, which is what you're coming out to describe to me as the rational choice to make, which is they're both flawed, and but in order to defeat Trump so that the next 4 years are not horrible because you believe that they will be this better under Biden. I have a slightly different belief, but that's your truth, right? So very truth is
Hmm.
very subjective. So let's go with yours. The problem is, or what I see is that you're taking a huge hit. You're gonna even if you choose to put your support behind Biden and he wins, and then you have the next 4 years and they turn out a little bit better for you because you have Biden. What you gave up there is huge because what you've essentially did is you turned your back on the Me Too movement. You told women out there that their issues can can wait a little bit longer because we have to think about the short-term benefits.
No,
If
not
we're not going to
necessarily.
hold
I
Biden
think
accountable. Well,
no, because
then
what I'm saying is, if Joe Biden, if this goes through, obviously he's not going to go through this episode unscathed, and I think he's already faced, even before this serious allegation had come about. Like I know that there was a lot of thing about the comments that he makes, the touching that he does. So I think he's become more aware of it, right? So, and he already committed to to having a women vice president. So like, yes, it's a shitty situation. It doesn't get you to a better movement, but it's also somebody who should be contrite and who now is going to be hopefully saying, no, don't be the guy that I was. This is why I was acting the way, because I was in this machista power trip,
but
and now I
he's
realize that what I did is wrong,
no
and
way.
now and
You
now
can't.
I'm doing things to set things right.
No, but you can't just say that because he's contrite and he feels bad about what he did. He's still going to become president. So think about a young girl out there. Young girls, what message is this sending to them that you had not just one woman but a group of women saying that this guy behaves in a way that's sexually inappropriate. This is coming on the heels of the Me Too movement, where we said we're not going to tolerate any of this from
So
any
you
man
want to
with
leave,
power.
but you want to leave Trump in office then?
I'm not saying leave Trump in office. I'm telling you that the path that you're choosing, which is short term gain, sacrifices. Everything is always a trade off. And what we're sacrificing is that we essentially would be turning our back on this movement that picked up so much steam by not saying that not just Trump is unqualified to be president based on everything we know about him, but Biden is also unqualified to be president. The guy is
Well, the thing,
unqualified.
yeah, but the thing is, movements are a gradual thing, right? So like right now, there was a great progress advancing racial rights and racial equity, and now under this administration, there's been some severe setbacks, and not even under this administration, a lot of because of the smartly how conservatives have packed the Supreme Court, and now you have Roberts, who has, since he was a Reagan administration appointee, has been working to curtail voting rights and do all these things. So like the progress has to be made on women's issues, on racial issues, on immigration. It's not going to be like a one quick solution. There's going to be two steps forward, one step forward, two steps back, and that's just the reality of how progress is made on these things. Unfortunately,
Yeah, but
it's not gonna be like, oh well,
yeah, man.
you know by having somebody or having somebody or not having somebody run, it's gonna be like an immediate
But
solution, or you're gonna see an immediate difference.
who's the arbiter of whose struggles take a backseat? Because what you're saying is the Me Too struggle has to take a backseat right now
I
because we
haven't
have
said
to.
that.
And we have. Well, if you choose Biden, that's the message that you're sending. That's what I'm saying.
What?
That's
That's a
exactly the.
false choice, dude.
How is that? Look at all the
It's a
allegations
false
again. Look at
choice.
all the allegations against him. That guy needs to be investigated. From what I see, not just the I am conflating a lot of different things with him, but apart from the issues with the woman, the other flaws that he has as a politician, he's not qualified to be the president. And I would rather vote on my principle to vote for someone that I do think is qualified, because if I do that and if enough people did that, we would actually eliminate both Trump and Biden as future potential candidates a lot faster. The strategy of we have to cover our nose and vote for him because he's what's good for us for the next 4 years, and depending on which Supreme Court justices they get in there, then maybe for the next 20 or 30 years or however long the Supreme Court justice stays in there, that's still short-term thinking to me, because you're only thinking about yourself, you're only thinking about your immediate needs, you're not thinking about the future of the country 50, 100 years from now. You're not thinking about your next generation and the one after. And that's why I vote even for things that are not, that don't seem to provide a short-term benefit for me, because I think that being consistent and holding both of these men accountable to the same standards is a lot better. Unfortunately, though, people don't think like that. People would rather go for the short-term gain, and I mean, yes, for the short-term benefits. And it's a lot easier to say, well, let's just vote for Biden this time. Let's not push too much for this investigation. We'll deal with it 4 years from now, or we'll deal with it 8 years from now. It's a trade-off. My strategy has a lot of problems too. I'm not saying it doesn't. I personally prefer that one.
Yeah, so I think that part of it, and this is in some ways what's presidential politics has been all about. Like, you vote for the lesser of two evils, or the person who is more aligned with your cause, so you think that it's going to make some progress towards your goal, but you also have a vision towards where you want to go. And I think that long-term vision is what defines people's ideology and values. And then there's yes, I mean, you do need some short-term wins. I mean, you need to set it up. Like, there's no telling to what the Obama administration did to empower people of color, to get people to be more involved in their politics, to run for office, to organize. To Not a lot of those people who were in the Obama administration and they are in the private sector, in other sectors, like advancing a more progressive agenda, a more equitable agenda. And Obama wasn't perfect. His policies were not perfect.
Yeah, but he wasn't accused of sexually assaulting a woman. I mean, these are different
He
things.
was not.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
not.
So we're talking about what disqualifies someone to hold the highest office, and there's got to be a short list of things that you do that disqualifies you. Obama, despite having his flaws, didn't, at least none of them were exposed that he had. He didn't have a lot of these character flaws that are red flags. Both of these guys have red flags, and um, yeah. Look, it's a hard one. I don't know. I'm just I'm just trying
No, you're
to.
right. I mean, but the reality is, it's a men's world. It still is, and it's still a white man's world, and it's just it is that, right? So, like, it sucks, right? So will this be the incident where Joe Biden drops, then again maybe an Elizabeth Warren, or to your point, maybe a Hillary Clinton? I don't think that's likely. I mean, if Michelle Obama jumped on it, I think that would be transformational, but I seriously doubt that she's gonna do it. But she would probably be the one of the um, most balanced, popular persons who can step in, short of Oprah Winfrey, who has the name recognition, who could potentially step in and run for office and do it. The reality is that she's not going to do it. Why? Because it's a shitty job. Your life, it's out there. You're being scrutinized for all the decisions that you make. Everything goes on, and everything that goes wrong in the world, everything
Mm-hmm.
goes wrong in the U.S. and the world, is sort of blamed on the president. And also, the presidency is not the only way to make a difference, and there are other ways
Mm-hmm.
to make contributions, to be influential, to have power, right? So there's so many people, billionaires, millionaires who have political power who don't even have to worry about getting themselves dirty. They support their causes, their organizations, and then, they can go about their business. So I forgot my train of thought,
It's
but I just
okay.
want to say that. No, but yeah, so yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I
Yeah,
hear you that it sucks that somebody who could potentially have, and in both cases, right? To
yeah,
your point,
both of them.
both of them,
But
and
the Republicans already sent that message to women a long time ago that they don't care about them. The Democrats were at least pretending that they did. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
And now
good
both
point.
parties are saying that yeah no, we care about you only as long as it doesn't interfere with our personal goals. The whole One of the reasons why I like talking about these things is because it's not because I have the right answer. It's just difference of opinions based on what truth you want to follow. And from my point of view, I'm always amazed at how it is our own behavior that at the same time perpetuates the things that we say we want to the bad aspects of our culture and society that we say we want to get rid of. And
Hmm.
it's a survival mechanism. It's in some extent, so it's not a simple thing. I like talking about it, like, just as a purely as a to make the point. Let's just take another situation, for example. um and I hope people don't criticize me for this, but let's just think about when the initial slave trade started, going to Africa, and then essentially first bringing African Americans in what was probably at the time, actually, it was as indentured servants, and then pretty soon afterwards they just started bringing them as slaves. Let's say that when they were picking up these slaves from Africa, that a percentage of them fought, like fought to the death on the boat, right? And so the ones that made it back to the Americas is only like your reduced to a reduced capacity. Let's say 25% of them fought to not
Hmm.
get submitted into slavery. You lost another half on the way here. By the time you get here, the rest of them, they get sold off to slave owners, and then they kill their slave owner or they fight to the point where, oh shit, well, we these guys, they just want to kill us, or they're fighting us, we can't subjugate them, we can't get them to work. If that happened for 6 months or a year, it would not have made the slave trade profitable, because at some point the slave owners would have realized, like, we can't go to Africa because these guys will fight to the death. It's counterproductive. We can't get them to work. They'll kill us. They'll fight, dude. Slavery would have never happened. Of course, for me to sit here and say everybody should have acted this way, it's like stupid, because it's just an exercise that under no scenario do human beings act that way, right? There's just no way that you could have had, even if you try to prepare your entire culture. Let's say somebody went back in time to Africa and say, hey guys, like in 100 years you're gonna have these Europeans that are gonna come over and it's gonna start taking you guys to become slaves. We're gonna start training all you guys to fight that when it does happen. Even
Hmm.
if that were to happen, it probably would have still been successful, for the reason that people just look at the short term goal of saving themselves. And sometimes it's a lot easier just to go along with it, because
Yeah,
at
survival. I
least,
mean, it's
exactly, at least it guarantees the chance of survival. And so for me to sit here and say, well, everyone should just vote their conscience and vote their principle, I know that I'm kind of full of BS with that exercise, because I know how impossible and how difficult it is, because everyone has different circumstances. It's because it's no different than the case of the slaves that are being brought over here. It's really hard to get people to all do one thing and to not think about their short-term survival and their short-term benefits. I kind of wish that it wasn't like that, because that gets us into a lot of problems as a species. But
no,
yeah.
it is, and I think to the also to make the point that there were people who resisted and continue to resist,
Oh yeah.
and unfortunately, part of the reason that those who resisted weren't able to get others to come in is obviously because it's an atrocious oppression, right? So whether it's you're talking about slavery, you're talking about the Nazi extermination of the Jewish people and others, like you also have to take into consideration that there were a lot of other factors aimed at subjugating and controlling and to your point, I mean, not only the people that you're trying to subjugate, but then sort of the others who are just implementing the policy, right? The police officers who maybe they weren't like complete Nazis, but they were the police officers who put people on the trains, who took those folks to the concentration camps. So yeah, I mean, to your point, there's there's a sense of awareness that and of not only awareness but also I'm trying to remember what the word is. I
What?
mean, I don't know if it's integridad, but like
Well,
consistency
self
or
is it self preservation? Because that's what I was gonna say. With this, is it's self preservation that gets us into this mess. Because as you said, there were a lot. And by the way, I wish that they would cover more of these figures that fought to the death instead of getting subjugated into slavery, because there were a lot of them.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it wasn't enough of them to make the venture unprofitable, right? So we always have like just the same thing right now with where you see it with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. That's why they vote for Bernie. That's why they because they don't want to keep repeating these same 4 year cycles where we say self preservation for the next 4 years, self preservation. We're looking at it and saying, no, if we stop doing that, we can actually make it a lot better. But because it's just a small percentage of us that are saying this, and everyone else is choosing self preservation, it's going to elongate this process just the same way that slavery lasted hundreds of years. That's the same way that this whole political system, it's going to die out eventually, but it will take a long time. And you have the people like me that are saying, yeah, let's try to choose a different strategy this time. But of course, it's really hard, I know.
So was a political system that would succeed or that's coming in the view of those individuals?
Like in my view of what is coming.
Yeah. And this is kind of gets me into a conversation. I know you sent me some information earlier this week,
Oh, right.
which which I looked at, and I know one of my concerns was that they talk about bringing down the system, but I'm trying to understand what kind of system are they proposing is replacing that system.
Yeah. Well, you get into a whole different issue with that, because if you have all of these idealists who say they want to tear down the system, but they don't know what they're going to replace it with, you're going to end up with the same thing. Because
Hmm.
unfortunately, I do when I say that eventually these things in politics are gonna disappear. Some of them will, but I think new ones will might might replace them. For example, in the future, any candidate that's tainted the same way that Biden and Joe Biden is, they're not gonna have a chance. They're not gonna have a fighting chance, because we're gonna take the woman's rights more seriously now, and we're gonna look into it. And if someone shows a pattern that they have misbehaved around women the same way that Biden has, because it's not just one woman, it's many, then that
Hmm.
person's not going to be qualified. So that's what I'm saying, that eventually we'll get to a place where that's better. But it's
Hmm.
just going to get replaced with something else, because the underlying flaw in humans is still the same. You haven't changed that. So they'll just replace it with better propaganda, better manipulation, and then they'll be able to steer you in a different direction. So they got rid of some of the stuff that you thought was important, but then they'll steer you in another direction. And like, for example, the wars, right? Like, most Americans are now okay with war. They're okay with us invading like Syria and saying, well, we have to go in there and get rid of him because he's a dictator. Like, really? Why? Right? There's so many questions. It's wrong in so many levels. It's even illegal to do stuff like that. But now people are okay with it. So they just, before that wasn't okay, but now it is. So on the one side, though, we are disqualifying candidates because they're inappropriate with women. We're saying no, that's a red flag, and we don't want presidents to do this. But now we're okay with presidents that start wars, because Obama did the same thing, because the underlying principle is very similar. In that case, it's not necessarily self-preservation, but it is something similar where we just act a certain way. Look, we're not going to change fundamentally. We're not going to change our political systems fundamentally unless there's a change in an evolution in human beings, and how they operate and how they behave.
Hmm.
And as long as we are choosing the short-term goals, the self-preservation, as long as we're hypocrites and as long as we're applying double standards to things, then we're always going to get politicians like this because they're just going to play. They're going to play to our shortcomings. So I don't know what system replaces it. You know, and here I sit here and I criticize the U.S. government a lot, but I do know that if I go to Mexico, I don't feel safe when I'm driving on the streets because the cops are super corrupt. So,
Hmm.
you know, and if I go to another country, I know that the US still has a lot of the freedoms that a lot of people in other countries don't have. So, you know, it's not a simple issue. I don't have an answer. I don't have an
Yeah.
answer for that.
Well, it's interesting because I think there are some societies that are to a place where they're getting to the place where you are, where, and I'm thinking some of the Scandinavian nations and things like that. But the problem there is like, there's this kind of sameness of thought or agreement that, okay, this is the thing that we need to do, but then there's a concern with diversity, right? And as soon as there's somebody who's coming from the outside, there's this concern that, oh, they're going to change our country, they're going to
Yeah.
change
You know
our
what?
political system.
You know why they're like that? They're like that because they're wealthy and they have the ability to be like that.
Yeah.
It's like a person. This is what bothers me sometimes when people when they meet someone for the first time and the way they describe that person is to say, "Oh, he's a really nice person." I was like, "Well, you don't know that person. Why are you saying he's nice?" And like saying somebody is nice means absolutely nothing. Is under what circumstances is he nice? Oh, can is it that he's nice because he has a lot of money and he doesn't have any problems, or is he nice despite the fact that he has everything in his being, everything in his existence, every experience that he's gone through is is the type of recipe that you have to make a criminal or to make someone behave like a total jerk and a dick, yet he chooses to be nice. Is that why he's nice? Because if that's the case, then yeah, that's a nice person. But if that person is just nice because they have a ton of money, they have privilege, they don't have to worry about anything, then I mean, are they really nice? They're just being nice because it's easy. And so these Scandinavian countries, they've been fortunate enough that they've structured their economic system in such a way that makes everybody prosperous. And if you're prosperous and if you have the ability to, then you can start thinking about taking care of others, and you start thinking about what we consider to be nice. But if they didn't have those things, then they wouldn't be. And you see it with the immigrants that are coming in. They're not so nice to some of those immigrants, right? For a
Hmm.
number of reasons. And so it's all about circumstances and the economic model that they've pursued. By the way, it does have its flaws though, because I think they have a, with the exception of immigrants, they have a zero population growth, which means the country's not growing. So they didn't have that problem. The economy peaked or it got to a certain level, but now they're gonna go through some transition as they have to figure out what comes next with their zero population growth. Do they let in immigrants? That the immigrants inevitably change your culture. So you know, again, they're nice because they're in a position where they can be nice. It doesn't mean that they've evolved to a higher state of consciousness, right? Where they are by default consistent because they're nice to each other. They're not very nice to, well, some of them are. They're very nice to the ones that are coming in. But even if they're nice to the immigrants that are coming in right now, they wouldn't act that same way if it was more. Like they have a threshold too, right? They'll let in.
Hmm.
They'll be okay with like you're the same way. If if somebody comes along and you have to take him into your house because you have to help them out because of maybe they come from a refugee from another country, yeah, you'll take him in and you'll help them. Maybe you'll help two, but you're not going to help five. You're not going to help 10, 20. There's no way. You can't fit them in your house. I mean, you could fit them, you can feed them, but it's going to be really, really uncomfortable, and it's going to change your entire lifestyle. It'll change it to take care of those 20 people. So niceness has its limit. And I'm not saying it
Hmm.
shouldn't. I'm just saying that I, it just, these things are difficult. So I don't take them lightly. I just ask the questions to see what comes out.
Yeah. Thank you for taking me on that journey with you.
I don't know. Did we get anywhere?
No, I think, maybe not in the immediate moment, but I think it does plant the seeds of conversation, discussions. I think I definitely, there were parts in this conversations where I felt uncomfortable. And that's fine because I think being uncomfortable with with the questions, with my own thoughts or things that I hadn't thought about. It's how I grow, right? So I need to be comfortable feeling uncomfortable, and I think that ultimately to do the right thing, um, and to grow, right, you need to be uncomfortable. Like just like in order for you to get stronger, you need to work out, and
Hmm.
working out it hurts, or you need to study, and study and sucks and it's boring. Like so many things in life you have to do, even if they're not enjoyable, because the ultimately the whatever comes after that is actually uh, a better you, a better understanding, a better healthier body, a new hobby. So it's just part of the of our growth process.
Yeah, and by the way, of course, I don't. That's the whole point of this show, that where we discuss things and we try to call each other out to see if there's a little bit of a deeper understanding that we can arrive at.
Hmm.
Sorry, a deeper understanding that we can arrive at. All in the hopes of, again, growing. And I wanted to talk about these protesters. We may not have a lot of time to get into it, but I think it's apropos. It's
Dude, these fucking
apropos. Well,
protesters.
it's so apropos to what we were talking about, because see, look at what they're doing, right? They're protesting that they want the economy to open up, and a lot of these guys are conservative. You can tell, especially based on the cities where these protesters are starting up. A lot of these people are the same people that were calling Colin Kaepernick unpatriotic for taking a knee.
Ain't that some shit?
And now, isn't this unpatriotic in a way? Because they're just
Big way.
thinking about selfishly about themselves, not the health of the elderly, the immunocompromised. They want to open up the country. What are the signs that are saying? What was one of the signs that said, "Oh, I can't get a haircut," right? Open up the country. I need a haircut. That was. It's not here, but it was in another one.
But even your boy Elon
Elon
Musk.
Musk. Oh yeah. Are you sure somebody didn't hack his Twitter account?
Oh man, but it's and I think there's definitely legitimate concerns, and yes, like I think the some of the things that they're saying and expressing is, yes, we understand, because that's what everybody's going through that. But you're not standing against you're standing against a virus. You're fighting a virus. You're fighting something that is doesn't think about your freedoms, doesn't think about it's just a killing machine, right? And it was interesting because I was just listening to a through line episode on the mosquito, and the fact that for millennia mosquitoes have been killing humans, um, and just because that's what they do, right? They have one purpose in life, which is to reproduce, and in the process of reproducing, they kill a whole bunch of people. So it's not like you can argue against a mosquito. It's not like you can argue against a virus, even if you have legitimate concerns. Just like, yes, it sucks, but hey, just wait a little longer, and then soon enough we'll be able to restart the economy and do our thing.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. If they're gonna call themselves patriotic for protesting the government oppression as they see it, then they need to call Colin Kaepernick patriotic as well.
Yeah, dude, and it's crazy was because I mean the images of like armed people going to the Michigan State Capitol is just crazy. Because obviously, if it were people of color, that would be a very different reaction and interaction with law enforcement.
I would feel better if these protesters were holding signs that said, "We need faster and more efficient testing for this
Yes,
virus." That's what they need to be
yes.
holding up, because that's the what we should be protesting against. Why did they underfund our healthcare system so that we were woefully unprepared for this? We don't have testing capacity, and that's why people can't go to work, by the way, because
Hmm.
we're not able to test. If you could test the young people, if you could test the healthy, they could go back to work, and you could quarantine the people that are more, these people they're protesting that they can get a haircut, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting point because a lot of these folks are the same folks who are against no, the Affordable Care Act in healthcare, and not to say that the Affordable Health Care Act would have made this situation better. But to your point, like it is the testing, it is so many other things. The fact that the federal government, even though they knew something was coming back in January, didn't do anything to or didn't do as much to get prepared. But yeah, I mean that's but yeah, but just the use of the flag, right? Like how they enshrine themselves in that, and the false veil of patriotism is what's maddening.
Well, it goes back to the what we were talking about earlier. They have a different truth. To them, truth is what they're pursuing, and it's a flawed truth. Sometimes when we disagree with people, it's not even. There's another way of looking at it in that we're both correct. Two people that are
What?
disagreeing can two people that are disagreeing with each other can both be correct within their own way of rationalizing things. So if these guys have a specific truth, they have a baseline for what they believe, for what truth is to them, and based on that operating principle, what they're doing is correct. It's only
Hmm.
incorrect to you because you have a different fundamental truth. So it's different pursuits of what we consider to be the truth. But in reality, you're both right if because truth is subjective, right? Who decides what's right and what's wrong? It's really hard to say.
The truth is,
I don't know. Oh,
no, but you make a good point.
I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying that I wish they. It's okay to protest, but you should be protesting for the right things. We should be protesting for more better testing. Like, say how come South Korea was able to test thousands of people in within a week or two of the outbreak, and then they were testing the capacity and the throughput was thousands. We can't do any of that here. So
We could, we just don't have the
we don't have the infrastructure. It would take way too long.
we're
We
not
don't.
prioritizing it, right?
Well, it could, yeah,
I
because
mean,
you
we can do anything. We can do anything we put our minds to, but unfortunately, we don't have.
even if they try to do it now, it would take months to years to set up the infrastructure to be able to do that, the supply chain and all of that. Because again, because they underfunded healthcare, that's why it's so difficult now to just go in there, hire people, train. There's just so much that goes into it. But if I was out there protesting, that would be the sign that I would be holding. So, any closing thoughts on this? We didn't get a chance to talk about Mexicans attacking health providers, but we can talk about that next time because I know
Yeah, which is weird because it's a thing in Latin America too. I know in Colombia,
huh,
because I guess people see them dressed like that and they're afraid that they're gonna
yeah,
infect them.
yeah. Let's talk about that on the next one. I think let's keep this one to a bit over an hour.
To the next episode.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
No, thank you for an interesting, thorough conversation, and we'll see what happens with this presidential race, which gets more interesting by the day.
Yeah, yeah. Joe Biden's in trouble. Those are my closing words.
All
All right. Leave it at
right.
that. See you.
Ciao.